My name is Vanessa Joseph, and I humbly serve as the chairwoman of the Haitian American Voter Empowerment Coalition, or HAV. As the daughter of Haitian immigrants, my love for Haitian culture goes well beyond the food, the music, and the language. Just like many of you, I am proud of Haiti's history. I am proud that we were the first independent Black nation, and I am proud that we were the first nation to abolish slavery. Certainly, this was not an easy feat given that our ancestors came from different African tribes, but they genuinely believed that l'union fait la force, and they put aside their differences and focused on a singular essential right, freedom and liberty for all. Today, as a community, we must return to this mindset. We need l'union. Nous besoin l'union plus passer tout l'autre bagay jodi. Our shared interests must come before our differences. It is said that in politics, there can be no permanent enemies, no permanent friends, but only permanent interests. No matter what your party affiliation, your religious beliefs, where you come from, and where you live, we are calling upon you to join in this movement. For far too long, our votes have been fragmented and therefore diluted. Yes, our votes have mattered, but they have not leveraged tangible results for the Haitian community. That is why I am proud to invite you to join the Haitian American Voter Empowerment Coalition as we work together to carry this movement forward. HAV is the result of a consensus building amongst a myriad of local and national organizations and individuals determined to ensure that the Haitian electorate is informed, empowered, and engaged, and that the votes of the Haitian electorate are valued. There are many ways in which you can work with HAV, and we need community champions across the United States and abroad who can help to motivate Haitian American voters within your locality. But if you don't have much time to volunteer, then we urge you to consider making a contribution to HAV. Of course, politics are expensive, but if each of us makes a small sacrifice and financially contributes to the cause, we can make a significant impact on the upcoming elections and future elections. While we are living in very challenging times as a result of the pandemic, we cannot allow it to distract us from continuing to fight for the causes that matter to us most. After all, bay piti pashish, et me en pile chay palou. Change is always possible, but it is up to each generation, each and every single one of us to make it happen. I hope our generation does not only wish to change the status quo, but that we really work to make it happen. Our generational task now is to repeat our ancestors' footprints and their models. L'union fait la force. That being said, I invite you to visit our website at www.havcoalition.org to make your contribution or sign up to join this coalition, our coalition. I thank you so much for your consideration and your commitment to moving our community forward.
We are back, Mona Lisa. We are back. What an amazing panel we just had on COVID. So much information was shared with our community. And the part that I was most interested in was to hear about the call to be involved and to learn about sort of the vaccine and because we know that there's a lot of people who are resistant. There are a lot of skepticism. So I think this hopefully will help folks in our community who may rightfully feel, not so sure, I don't want to be first, I'm not sure what's going to happen with this thing, to at least consider doing a bit more research and maybe even take the vaccine so that we all can be protected, not just for ourselves, but for our loved ones as well.
And of course, I'm glad that we had a team of experts who were qualified enough to shed light on the amount of myths that have been surrounding our communities. And I'm certainly ready for the second segment of our Diaspora Townhall for this evening. But before we proceed, I'd like to thank our wonderful sponsors, starting with ourselves, The Mojo Show, the VSS Hour, Teleimage, our partner from New York City, of course, Chocarela from Haiti, Telepam, and of course, VSS Hour, definitely from Florida. It's a pleasure to have those wonderful partners.
We can't forget Book It Right Accountancy.
Cannot do that. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I would be remiss if I did that. And of course, on behalf of the National Alliance for the Advancement of Haitian Professionals, NAAHP, HAVE Coalition, the Haitian American Voters Empowerment Coalition, and most importantly, NAAHPON, National Haitian American Elected Officials. I want to welcome every one of our listeners who are ready to sit and listen and learn and become empowered politically, civically, with the next panel that we're about to present.
Indeed. And I think, we're talking about political empowerment in this particular segment, and we understand, and there's going to be some wonderful news, I'm sure, that's going to be shared, and everybody's so excited about it. And I'm sure that's going to be part of the panel, because that's so important, what's just happened for our community. And it is because of civic engagement. Civic engagement is so important and so crucial for our community. We have Haitian Americans who are running for office all across this country, and they're running for office at all levels. And people need to understand the important role that folks who run for office, particularly at the local level, how those folks impact the daily lives of their communities. So I'm hoping that folks are logging on and will be joining us in this conversation with elected officials who are serving the communities. Particularly exciting to see this panel coming up with Haitian American elected officials, and they're going to talk to us about why civic engagement is important.
May I also add, Johnny, that in honor of Haitian Heritage Month, there is no better time to celebrate our Haitian American elected official who represent us, who continue to make us proud day in and day out across the United States.
Yeah, and I think, very often people don't realize the amount of work that it takes to serve, right? I mean, people see sort of the glitzy side because you are an elected person, but they don't realize that quite often when someone is elected, they have no lives anymore.
Allow me to tell you, I work alongside with many of them.
Yes, the community expects you to be responsive, and you have to be everywhere to every event. And sometimes I wonder how they do it. But we're going to move on. This is about the next panel, and the moderator for the next panel is our amazing friend, Vanessa Joseph. Vanessa is an attorney, and she's currently serving the city of North Miami as the city clerk. And in that office, she has made history as both the city's youngest and first Black female city clerk. Vanessa is, of course, a well-respected attorney. In addition to serving the people of North Miami in her elected capacity, she serves as the supervising attorney for a notable nonprofit organization that is dedicated to the needs of South Florida's immigrant population. Vanessa earned her bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Miami, and she got her master's in public administration in her JD. Before fully launching her legal career, Vanessa spent her years as a law student working as an advocate for immigration and human rights, two issues that are very close to your and my heart, Amo. And during that period, she served at two legal clinics where she fought on behalf of South Florida immigrant community and advocated for veterans, persons with disabilities, and individuals with HIV and AIDS. She is an amazing person. She's part of the VSS Hour, a show that I watch every Sunday. She's a purposeful and fervent agent of change. She is a passionate servant leader who is dedicated to ensuring that the needs of her community are met. And she does so through access to all necessary tools to advance the progress of our community. So I want to say welcome, Vanessa. It is always wonderful to see a beautiful smiling face and knowing the amount of work that you're doing. So welcome. And we're going to turn over this panel to you, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you so much, Johnny. And thank you so much, Dr. Mona Lisa. You know, the Mojo Show, I love you both.
We love you.
And so good evening, Fumi. Again, my name is Vanessa Joseph. I am the chairwoman of the Haitian American Voter Empowerment Coalition, or HAVE Coalition. I'm also the secretary of the National Haitian American Elected Officials Network, also known as NAAHPP. And if you have been to the NAAHP conferences in North Miami, I've been your MC for the past couple of years. Unfortunately, we had to take a break because of COVID-19. Hopefully, we'll get to see you in person soon. It's really, truly a pleasure to moderate this wonderful panel with my fellow elected officials. And I'm also looking forward to seeing your comments and questions in the live feed. So please keep them coming, because this panel is about you just as much as it is about these folks here today. Now more than ever, civic engagement is crucial. And Haitian Americans are running for office in different states around the country and at various levels of government to help impact their communities. So through this conversation, we're going to explore the backgrounds of our esteemed panelists. We'll talk about their motivations for becoming public servants, the roles that they play within their local communities, and why civic engagement is important to them, but also why it's so crucial for the success of our communities. And so panelists, welcome. A pleasure to be with you all here tonight. Always a pleasure for me to be in your company. So to start, why don't we have each of you briefly introduce yourself to the viewers, and we'll go ahead and get started with you, Farah.
Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vanessa. I'm Councilmember Farah Lewis. I'm the first Haitian American woman elected to serve in the New York City Council and to represent the 45th Council District in Brooklyn. And I'm so happy to join all of you this evening for this really important conversation.
Awesome. Eunice?
Hello and good evening, everyone. It is an absolute pleasure to be here to have this conversation with you. My name is Councilor Eunice Zeigler. I too am the first Haitian American elected official to serve on the City Council in the City of Methuen, and the first person of color to serve on the City Council in the City of Methuen, Massachusetts.
Awesome. And then Diana.
I'm like sitting here thinking if I'm the first for anything, but my name is Councilwoman Diana Révolus. I am actually second generation. I'm working in civic engagement in my family from both my parents. So I know I'm not the first in Connecticut. I just don't know if I'm the first in this town. But we have many Haitian elected officials within our council, on the Board of Education, Common Council, and throughout. So we're valiantly moving throughout Connecticut, and luckily it's because of parents that was doing it in the 70s and a group of valiant people before me. So I just represent them, my ancestors, and the generation we have behind us.
Love to see it. Stan?
Good evening, everyone. In Sakpase, Sali tout le monde. It's an honor to be with you all today. My name is Stanley Neron. I serve as commissioner on the Elizabeth Board of Education. I happen to be the first Black man to ever be president of the Elizabeth Board of Education. I also serve as the first Haitian American director for the city of Elizabeth. I serve as director of recreation, and I'm also the executive director of New Jersey for Haiti, a nonprofit. I'm doing work in Haiti since the 2010 earthquake. And also, I am co-owner of First Republic Restaurant and Lounge, which is a Haitian restaurant, lounge, and art gallery. So it is truly an honor to be with you all today. I'm the only male, so I'm totally honored, and I salute all my sisters in leadership today.
Awesome. You're in great company, I'll say that. And I think it's really important for our audience to get to know each of you a little bit better. And I think that one of the ways that we're able to really connect with viewers is by telling them, right, what actually motivated us to run for office? What gave you that sense that, you know what, this is something that I have to do? And so we'll go ahead and start with you, Stan, and then we'll go to Diana.
Sure. Wow. That's a loaded question. I guess my commitment to my people, ever since a young boy, my mother took me to Haiti, and I believe it was 1979. I'll never forget it. It was a memorable moment for me because I saw stuff that I had never seen before. And my mother was out giving to the poor, and we were in front of the Cathédrale in Port-au-Prince, and I'll never forget, I was asking my mother, what's going on here? There's all these poor people, and, some of them were amputees, and some of them, were very ill. And I was, it was a memorable experience for such a young child. I think at the time I must have been like 5 years old, so I'm telling my age. And I think that stayed on my heart. So all my life, I always wanted to give back and do mission work and relief work. And I think that metamorphosized into other work of advocacy, being a human rights advocate. And, I always tell young people when I speak to them that you got to follow your passion, you got to follow your heart. And if you follow your passion and you do your passion, you'll never, ever have to work again. And, like most Haitian households, they tell you, go to school, become a doctor, become a lawyer, become an engineer. And, those are the main careers they tell you to go into. But they never talk about becoming a public servant, right? They never talk about, going into government, helping people, starting a nonprofit, anything of that nature. And I think that, I started off wanting to be a doctor. And I got to start working in the hospital and realized that wasn't for me. And I said, I can't be depressed all the time. Not that being a doctor is depressed. I come to learn that later on in life. But I realized that I wanted to be around people and I wanted to help people. And I think the most life-changing thing for me was when I started to mentor young people in our community. And I started to help kids get out of gangs and help young girls who were, young teenage parents in general, not just girls, but young fathers and young teenage moms that were, having kids at a very young age, direct them into a path to put them on the right direction. It started to really empower me. And it was, I was gaining more from it, from helping them than anything else I could do in life, and I had several careers prior to doing that type of work. And I think that, when we do this type of work, this is what sets the platform of changing your community. Because it's one thing to sit there and complain and say, you know what, I need to change my community. Why is this happening? Why is there, black on black violence? Or why is, there are these disparities, especially in our Haitian community? You have to be that voice. And I'll leave you at this point. When I first ran for office, I had just worked on the Obama campaign in 2008. And in 2009, I decided at the time I had very long locks. And I wanted to show the young men in my community that the only difference between you and I was the suit that I wear. Because as soon as I put on a white T-shirt, we're going to get profiled the same way. And I had so many young Haitian men in our community that we were mentoring, and just black men in general, that, it motivated them, just like I felt President Obama motivated so many of us. Right here in our community, I was able to motivate a lot of young people to engage in leadership and also understand why they should be part of the voting process. Because people see elected officials, they vote, and then they walk away. But it's an entire process that we have to really ingrain in our people. And we got to start them young. And that's why I believe, that's what motivated me. And that's what drives me to do what I do. It's about the people. And it's about, being part of the solution.
Right. That's amazing. Diana?
I don't even know how I follow that.
You got this.
Right? Thank you. So my story is a lot different. I didn't want to be here.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Take your time, because I think you have a powerful story, and share as much as you want to share, but I think you have a real important story.
So, and I appreciate you saying that. So, again, I come from this, and it's funny you speak about like parents not talking about it, right? I come from two parents who came from Haiti and didn't just think about changing lifestyles for their children. They came into a community and saw a problem for their community, not only here, but abroad. My whole life has been about community and servitude. But there was growing up as a child of an activist, you grow up with a different type of look and perspective to it. That being said, I grew up just being a part of the community and wanting different, but there came a part in my movement and actions that not only myself, but my parents realized how much we are of each other. It then led me for my dad giving me the community center he was doing. My mom's, her work is still there. And crazy enough, my father passed last year. That same year, I became on the slate, then I became a commissioner, and then I was appointed to council. And I was asked to go to that 3 times before I actually accepted it. The reason why is this. My whole life has always been a community activist. I've always been a representation of the community and children in it. I'm even someone who left medicine and went to holistic care because of what I dealt with, and even finding out more so about what I come from Haiti and from families who were like the witch doctors of sorts, not really, but they understood earth and they understood herbs and they understood how to heal you in a natural manner. And I just didn't understand and couldn't rock with at the time that an activist could sit in the same role as a politician in that moment. It also was weird to go through all that with my father passing. So that being said, I get to move a little bit and start seeing things happening, trying to push a more nutritional community, seeing things that are happening with my children. I'm an activist, I'm a business owner, and I have a conversation with Professor James Smalls. And he was one who was able to tell me that he's like, one of the things that our community did was forget to put activists in political roles because we thought that they had our color, that they still had the same intentions when they didn't.
Yeah.
That's when I sat with where I am supposed to be here. My mission here, if ever, is never to be here for a political matter. It's always here to be here for the community. I believe politics happen to people and not with people. I believe they only come to you when they want to vote. And I believe you only vote when you think it's like the big one, but people don't understand how involved and integral local politics are to them. So that being said, if my motions in the community as a servant to truly show my leaders what's going on, they have to understand the leadership, that's the servitude behind them, and making them better leaders, becoming stronger stockholders, and talking about an ownership, which is directly connected to education. And I mean home ownership, I mean land ownership, so on and so forth. Then it was even daunting to me to talk to somebody and they didn't even understand what district they're in. Like, you have to understand, if you have a school complaint and you don't understand your district, we're having another conversation. You know what I mean? And it was that made me stay here. And that's what drives me. And it will always drive me, because if I can get my constituents to understand that you're the reason I'm in the seat, and I'm never here for the people around the table to make me the reason I'm here for the seat, then I'm here. Because if I'm ever here for around the table, I'm leaving the next day. And that's why I'm here.
Wow. Thank you so much, Diana.
Thank you. Thank you.
Eunice?
Wow, thank you so much for sharing your stories. I ran for office because I had always been behind the scenes, right? I love, local governance. I love community engagement. I was always involved ever since I was young. And so I always would be the one supporting and volunteering on campaigns for women that I respected in the community, because I value female leadership. I value good leadership. I also value female leadership, because I found that, you know, the women that I was supporting were going in there and really being creative, right? And really looking at the issues we were facing in our community in a more well-rounded way. And so an opportunity became available in my district where, you know, both the incumbents were termed out. We have term limits of 3 2-year terms. And a sitting councilor at the time asked me to consider running. Now, because I've been involved behind the scenes, I knew all the statistics of it takes asking a woman 7 times in order, you know, to get her to say yes and all of that. And I completely do not like, you know, playing to the statistics and stereotypes and all that. And I'm like, okay, let me take some time and think about it. So I did my pros and cons. And when I looked at my list, there were way more pros than there were cons. You know, I saw myself as, you know, with my background in community development and organizing, my love for the community, the fact that I was qualified. You know, I have my bachelor's in political science and my master's in economic and social development. So I know what I'm talking about when it comes to policies we need to be focusing on to improve the community. So with that, I decided to run, and it was an experience, my first time, right? Running for office is an experience anytime, right? But especially the first time, because I had persons in the community who I knew and respected who feared that I'd even be successful because I was a person of color, because there had never been a person of color serving on the city council. I didn't think that it was possible, right? And so I got a lot of the, I hear you're running, you know, no matter what, I know that you're working hard. I know that you're gonna work hard. And what I heard was
telling you that you're going to lose it. Right. That's what they were trying to say. Yeah.
Exactly. And these are people who knew who I've, you know, worked hard to get elected and or volunteered with on other campaigns. And so, you know, maybe it was the Haitian in me, and I was like, okay. I see you. You know, I'm gonna, you know, we'll talk after.
But this person said, nah, we good.
yeah. I'm like, all right, you know. And so, you know, I had a difficult primary. It was myself as the only female, and there were 4 other gentlemen who were running for 2 seats. And I won the primary. And then after that, people started to look a little differently, right? They started saying, oh, maybe there's a chance for this girl here. And then, you know, I won my general election. And for me, it was momentous, not only because I knew I could do it, but I knew that in my role as a counselor, I would do things differently that no other counselor has. Mm-hmm. You know, like I come from a legacy of my grandmother raising her family with only an elementary school education and running a successful catering business with contracts for several local factories, right? So I come from this legacy of exceeding barriers, exceeding boundaries. I feel like as Haitian Americans, we all have that story, right, of exceeding boundaries. And so as a counselor, I'm able to show my community, you know, this is my legacy that I'm sharing with you. This is my heritage that I'm sharing with you. We're going to look at these issues from a different lens, and we're going to think creatively, think outside the box, and really take pride in our community. And so, you know, that's what really encouraged me to run. And I'm so glad that I did. 3.5 years later, I'm still doing the work. working hard and bringing about some really great innovative ideas to my community.
That's amazing, amazing. Farah, who's actually running right now as well.
Yeah, again, for the fourth time. I just want to thank all the panelists for sharing their experience. I have a little bit of what all of you shared, but the single most important factor for me running for office was representation of the immigrant experience. My parents, your parents that you all represent the immigrant experience, your parents, everyone watching right now is part of the immigrant experience. All of our parents wanted to be a part of that American dream. That's why they came here. And I could remember my parents and my neighbors and people that I went to church with. All of our immigrant experiences were the same because we had cultural barriers, we had language barriers, we had economic barriers. There wasn't a single thing that I could say was different, except for the fact that we all had barriers that other people did not have. And I remember when an opportunity came up for me to run for office for an open seat, I had barriers. They told me that I wasn't the right fit because I was Haitian. They told me that I wasn't good enough. And I remember thinking, you know what, I shouldn't do this. And it was the immigrant experience that caused me to run, because I had Jewish people come to me and say, Farah, you're qualified. Look at this master's degree you have. And they had to remind me, hey, Farah, you worked in government for 6 years. And it was the South Asians that told me that. But it was the Haitians that reminded me about the Dessalines spirit of being determined. They had to remind me who I'm going to represent when I get to the city council. And it's not just about, the Haitians, because I have more than Haitians in my district, but I'm a daughter of the descendant of Haitians.
Right.
And that is what really motivated me to run. And once I did that, I became the daughter of everyone, Haitians, Jewish community, South Asian community, everyone. And if it wasn't for everyone kind of motivating me that I was their number one choice, opposed to what the political establishment wanted, I would have never done it. I have a heart of an activist. And before I ran for office, I was a journalist. I have the mind of an investigative journalist. I have the heart of an activist. But I have the motivation and determination of being Haitian and being a daughter of the descendants of Dessalines. And it's very important for me to represent that each and every day when I'm at the city council.
That's amazing. And I think something that we often forget, right, is that part of our history and part of our heritage is that as Haitian people, right, as descendants of Haiti, we never only look out for our own. That has never actually been part of our history, because if we remember our history correctly, right, we got liberation and we told everybody, look, this is where it's at. You can come here and be free too. Right. And we said that we would be your allies in your own liberation. Remember that we also inspired, right, Simón Bolívar, who went to lead revolutions across Latin America. Right. And so that reminds me all the time that we have never been a self-interested people. Right. And so while we are Haitian, we understand that our experiences are truly inherently tied, right, to the experiences of our larger communities that we find ourselves in. And so I think that this point that you make, right, Farah, about the South Asian community and the Jewish community saying that, you represent us too, is really important, because as a daughter of Haiti, we were always taught that we don't exist alone. We take care of our people, we take care of ourselves, but we also acknowledge the fact that we're part of larger communities, and that's important too. So I really appreciate that. All right, so this panel is all about political empowerment, right? So how do we set a foundation for this? And I think that the best way to set the foundation is to kind of go into your own personal definitions of political empowerment. So what does political empowerment look like to you? And we'll go ahead and start this time with Diana.
That's a good question. Because I think I see it a little bit backwards, right? To me, political empowerment would be if my constituents understand political roles. Okay. So, like, for me, again, being here, I need you to understand your district, your representatives, the different councils, who to go to when you have an argument. I have a grievance, to hold me accountable. See, like once I get my constituents to understand those things, then I can talk to you about policies, who works with the policies that work with you and what your passions are. So I know my answer should be so much different, but for me, it works so much backwards because I agree with you being behind the scenes or being from grassroots or being the activist. Their understanding for me is empowerment because once they understand, I can move. I can execute. But without their understanding, they're just blindly voting. Not even for what I think of, but just because I hold a political D, for example. You know what I mean?
And so I think what I hear you saying is that political empowerment, we can't really get there, right? Without actually maybe some civic education. Right. And so Farah, I wonder what your thoughts are on that and also what your definition of political empowerment is.
So part of what Diana said, civic engagement is the first component. If we can't help our communities understand the elements of the power of their voice, they cannot be a part of or have inclusion in political empowerment. And that's the most important component. Folks normally just vote down the line. They don't ask questions. They don't challenge status quo. They don't put those that want to be in power in a position to question, what can you do for our community? What can you do for our district? And that's really important for them to understand why we need to be a part of the political process, but it's also understanding who's representing you, what can they provide to your community as a whole, and how that allows you to remain in your community moving forward so you can continue to be a voice for those people.
Awesome. Stan, what are your thoughts on political empowerment?
Well, I concur with what everybody basically said. An educated voter is a powerful individual. You know, somebody who understands the process, somebody who understands, you know, their role and what their vote means and that they really matter is extremely powerful. And like I reiterate, educating our youth to understand their role in this society is essential to all that we're talking about, because we're not going to be here forever, right? What we have to do is we really got to plant these seeds and politically empower our young people, because it starts, you know, every movement starts with the youth. I started at a very young age of 16 years old doing the work that I was doing in the community, advocating for politicians and doing advocacy work. And that to me is where, you know, it is fertile ground. If you can empower young people to understand their purpose, therefore they can plan out 10, 20, 30 years and start to prepare who's going to run for office, who's going to be involved, who's going to be engaged, and how we're going to actually change policy. I think my sister from Connecticut, I forget her name, I'm so sorry, Diana, right? Diana talked about health and wellness and the root causes of what illness comes from, right? And where that comes from. We have to understand politically what the root causes of white supremacy is. We have to understand what the root causes of the disparities are. We have to understand what the root causes of why Haiti is where it is today. You got to understand the root causes. And that's why I said an educated voter is extremely powerful.
Awesome. Eunice.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the reflections that my colleagues just gave. But I look at it at a deeper level as well, in that political empowerment is not just education around the process. It's about understanding also that you too can have a seat at the table. Understanding that you bring value in a way that no one else will bring because of your lived experiences, right? One of the things that I would love, for us as leaders to continue to do, especially leaders of color, is that we have this innate ability to motivate and inspire. It's important that we motivate and inspire others to run, so that we're continuing to see representation take place at every table. It changes the course of discussion because the policies are made and crafted for those who are engaging in the process, right? So if a leader is not hearing from a particular person within their district, they're not thinking about how that policy will affect them or their family or their cultural community. By having more persons who are able to understand, well, if we put a policy forward for fines for a particular issue in the community, well, we need to understand, well, is there a different way to look at this, right? Is there some education that we could do as opposed to imposing fines for whatever issue it may be, right? Looking at things in a holistic way, so that we're saying, are we really bringing or moving our community forward, or are we further disenfranchising people within our community because of our restricted lens? So political empowerment, it's such a multivariate, construct.
Right.
But we need to look at it from all different sides, so that we're doing it justice when we're talking about it, when we're preparing people to engage and to really recognize their own political power.
Right. And I know, Farah, you're going to have to jump off soon. And so I really want to talk about TPS while you're on, because I'm sure that as a council member, in a community in New York that I'm sure has a significant amount of, Haitians live there, I really want to talk about what this decision actually means, right? So there's the decision itself and what it literally means for the people that will benefit from it. But what does it mean in the context, right, of representation, right? How did political empowerment, civic engagement, civic education, how did we get here, right? And so Farah, if you could just give us maybe an idea of what this decision means to you, qui ça représente pour communauté Paul, and how you think our engagement as people, as elected officials, as activists and advocates, how it led up to this point.
I just want to thank all the organizations that sponsored today's conversation, because if it wasn't for these organizations and folks like you that are on this panel, and a myriad of people, but I have to give all of you the accolades because you're in front of me, but it was your efforts that led to this, having conversations with the right people at the White House that led us to where we are right now. I got a call yesterday from Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and once he called me to let me know about the 18 months extension, I was so elated and excited. I told him I'm going to call every Haitian radio station because this is what they were waiting for. And I think it's everyone being collaborative, coming together, having these conversations, and being on the same page about what we need to ensure we get results for. And that's our people that can remain here, that can continue to work, continue to have some type of finances and stay here. That's very important. It all goes back to representation. We need our folks to be able to stay here. And that is what is the most important thing for me. When I speak to people in my community, they're always asking, how can we extend TPS? What other resources can be provided? And we know that the federal government plays a huge role in that. And what I'm grateful for is that the Biden administration listened and they actually followed up with a result. And with that, I'm hoping for even more resources and for us to continue to get what we need for our people. But they listen and they provide results when we're all working together collectively.
Eunice, I mean, what are your thoughts? I know that, you know, for you, this is something that you've kind of been a part of, especially with NAAHPP in terms of engagement with the White House and different agencies within the administration. But in terms of speaking directly to the importance, right, of making sure people are empowered to vote for those that they know will represent their interests, you know, what did that feel like to you? What was going through your head?
Yeah, I too was, very excited that, I see this as definitely as a win, right? But there's always more, right? So for me, it's this work is, you can never let up, right? So we have that 18-month extension. Okay, great. I want to make sure that we continue, that we ensure that 18 months is 18 months, right? That nothing happens in between now and then to reverse that it's solid.
Right.
And then two, after the 18 months, I want to make sure that we're already not waiting to the 18 months to try and to find a plan, that right now that we continue to the hard work so people are aware of it, right? So getting that education out there.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes what happens in immigration, and Vanessa, you probably know this more than me, is that there are people out there that take advantage of folks who are trying to gain citizenship, who purport themselves sometimes as having knowledge around the process, and will take people's money and try and really set them back, right? So now is the time to make sure that we are getting people to the right resources so they are able to keep that status, right? That they are able to, if they're in a position to use that as a road, as a pathway to citizenship, so that they feel like they're heard, they feel like they can continue to partake in the process, and that they have access to the resources that will benefit them and their families, so they're healthy and so they're safe. But yes, I'm definitely excited. But now for me, I celebrate. Now we're going to work. Now you have your little have a celebration for a day, but keep the work, because it's so important to our community, and it also sets an example for other communities as well to do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Diana, the activist who said she wasn't even trying to be here, she was just trying to do the work. What does it look like for us, right, to continue to fight? We're saying thank you. We've thanked the Biden administration enough, but what does it look like for us to continue to put that pressure on and really engage our communities to demand, right, a pathway to citizenship?
You know what you reminded me too? This is an election year for me as well. I told you.
And Eunice as well.
Yeah. So, and what also, of course, this is great, right? But it's also like, breathe for a second, keep going. The activist in me is like this is how I look at it. Really weird, right? But there are so many, especially in my age and a little younger, that want to find a connection and going back home and bridging that gap so much. And it's like, we're working on citizenship, but there's so many of us that want to go back home and take care of home. So it's kind of like a funny entity, because I'm one of those people who, like, I'm born here, I have citizenship here, and I'm looking for my citizenship back home. So it's a funny dynamic again for the activists, right? Because it's a great okay for now, but I feel as a community we're just owed so much more that we fight for no reason. You understand? Like, where's our money? Can I get that back too? You know what I mean? Like, just saying. You know what I mean? Like, that part. Like, so we get trinkets when we should be getting crowns. And I just don't want us to just be okay with trinkets. We are a vanguard community for a reason. You understand? We are resilient for a reason. But how do I make my homeland be a place whether here or there. I don't care where I am. I'm safe here. I'm safe there. I'm strengthened there. I'm strengthened here. I have money here. I have money there. I have land there. I have land here. We are all across the nation. If we put us together, the one thing that can make it move, if we pay attention, there's a lot of us with a lot of education. If we put our intelligence together, our money together, what could we do?
Mm-hmm.
So this is great. I don't want to minimize this at all. But again, for the activist that looks at us even more so as a Black and red, I feel we're owed so much more.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be fighting in these type of ways for land that we actually help develop.
Yeah. I mean, if they want to do a trade, we could take the Louisiana Purchase right back.
Right back. Can I take Chicago right back and like take our money back? Like, help me out here. So you know what I mean? We are ingrained in this land's fiber and history, and our children hear about it in their 30s and 40s. What are you talking about?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So it's resilient, and yes, but it's funny because there's so much of us who's like on things like Clubhouse and talking about, so how do we get $1 million back home? How do we come together and get back home? How do we touch villages and get roads together, lands together? More than, and forgive me, but more than building churches, like how do we help our villages? How do we do something like an Akon did to his home?
Right.
You know what I mean? So I don't want to veer from it. Please don't take me wrong. It's just funny because there's so much of us who want to go home.
Yeah, but there's just more that we can do. All you're saying is that there's still more.
There's just still more.
Right.
There's still more, but it's a big valiant. It's a valiant award, and it's great. But I just feel
there's more to be done. And so, Stan, what are your thoughts as somebody who's done, advocacy? What are your thoughts on how we get people engaged, right? How do we get to more? How do we get people to continue to put this pressure on?
Well, I think, we can't stop with the victories, right? You gain a victory and you just keep pushing on. It's an ongoing, it's an arduous process. I remember back in 2010 when we started doing the work in Haiti. We've been in Haiti now for the past 10 years through New Jersey for Haiti, doing community development, water purification, and supporting schools and education, and doing sustainable medical clinics. We believe that this is a movement that's going to take many, 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 many years. We're planting this seed for our children to take over, and I mean, to get people involved and engaged, Sister Eunice said it best. They got to feel like they have a seat at the table, right? To get them engaged, they have to understand we are part of the process. You matter, right? You're a major stakeholder in our community. And I think, and I know I can speak for our community. I think when we get elected, they're like, okay, new fini.
Right.
Your office, new bon.
Right.
No. You're more important than me. I would not be here without you, And I think they feel like I have the ultimate power. Charlene Bafflin has the ultimate power. Joseph Champagne has the ultimate power. You all have the ultimate power because you're elected and they voted for you at the ballot, and now you can make the world turn. No, they have to understand. They got to tap into their God self and understand they got the power, right? They got to understand that they make the world go round. It's the people that do this. We're nothing without the people, I think Mayor Baraka has this in Newark, New Jersey, has this thing where he says, we are the mayor, right? It's so true. We are the mayor. We are the city. We are the government. We are the president. We are what makes this world go round. We are what causes change. And if we don't understand that, we have a long way to go. If the people who are voting for us just keep thinking that they're going to press that button for us every November or every time an election cycle comes around.
And that's going to be it.
And that's going to be it. It just doesn't, it does not matter. One of the key things that I've been saying is it's a beautiful thing that we're all elected throughout the country. But remember what was happening before we got elected. Let's take a look back. There were a lot of churches. There were a lot of community activists. There were a lot of people doing some grassroots work. We stand on some serious shoulders who shed some blood and some sacrifice and had did so much. We cannot forget those things. But not only can we not forget, that movement can't stop.
Right.
Because that's what got us here. And, you know, there's a unique saying, what got you here won't keep you here. So you got to keep reinventing yourself. You got to keep pushing. You got to keep motivating. You got to keep cultivating the people. But they have to understand, you know, in order to galvanize our people and get them engaged, they have a seat. We have to make sure that we keep that seat available for them in those seats so that they have a voice. Because if they don't have a voice, before you know it, we will be something of the past time, and we would have had this opportunity to do what we're doing and hold our positions. But then the people are voiceless. And if they're voiceless, then, you know, we don't matter.
Right. Like, what was the point of us right, being the first?
Sure.
Being the only, right? If we didn't have anything transformative for the folks that we were supposed to represent. And I think a lot of people
be the only, you know,
right.
We cannot continue to be the first.
Absolutely.
You know, we got to make sure it continues.
Right. And, you know, a lot of people think that, okay, we've elected them, so they're going to go out and get our business done. But what they fail to take into account is that when you sit on a council, and especially when you sit on a council with people who don't look like you, right? You want, well, you don't even want, you need your community to show up so that they can see that you're not just coming out with this stuff out of your head and you're the only one who wants this stuff to pass, that there are people in the community who actually need this, right? But a lot of times people don't get engaged. They don't show up. They don't come. They don't write letters. They don't do any of that. And I think that we take for granted, right, how much of a role that just as an average citizen we play in the process. And I think that as we've been speaking, right, when we think about political empowerment, one of the things that stands out to me is it's not only that, you know, so many of us are getting elected and we're in areas, whether it's a lot of Haitians and Haitian Americans living there or not, right? But there are just so many of us who actually do participate in the process, whether we're voting or we're participating in campaigns, right? We have a lot of Haitian Americans who are playing very significant roles behind the scene, right? But then there is still a significant portion of our population who is not showing up. They're not showing up to vote. They're not joining unions. They're not getting involved in campaigns. I mean, they're not doing
enough. It's simply not enough.
Right.
You know? I mean, we have some major players, but we don't have enough. We need
exactly
more, you know.
And so I think my next question for you all is, what do you believe are some of the challenges, right, that our brothers and sisters face, which prevent them from engaging politically? And I'm not saying running for office, right, because that's not the only way you can engage. And what would you say are some ways that we as a community could work to overcome some of those barriers? And so I'll go ahead and I'll start with Eunice, because I know, you know, we're on HAV together. She's one of my board members. So we're doing this.
Yeah. I think sometimes people fail to see a connection with why it's important to them in their lives, right? Especially during, you know, this last year and a half of pandemic, where the economic challenges for families have increased insurmountably. You know, our food pantries have been seeing hundreds and hundreds more families, you know, coming and needing services. Families that, you know, didn't even think that they would be in that position, you know, who were one paycheck away of, you know, from needing to apply for SNAP assistance. And they didn't even realize that, right? We didn't have a plan for that. So, you know, when you pair that with, you know, still this need to get politically involved, some people just, you know, some families just have to make the decision or feel like they have to make the decision between one or the two, right? That they have to just, you know, focus on the, you know, any economic challenges and feeding their family, and they just can't create time for being politically engaged, reaching out to their counselor, their state rep, their state senator. However, it goes back to education. Because if we failed our community, if they feel like it's too arduous of a task to reach out to their leaders, right? Because we're in the roles to be able to make their lives easier, right? To get them connected with resources quicker, right? So that's another, that goes back to your question about political empowerment too, right? What does that look like? Knowing that you're important, knowing that, your vote is what got that leader in that seat.
Sure.
Right? Your intention for having that person in that seat representing you is so that they can represent you, so that they can put forward these ideas that are going to be really instrumental for the community. But as the voter, you are the community as well. So understanding that your needs are important to the conversation, because your needs as a community member are similar to that of your neighbor's needs, your neighbor's sister's need, brother's need, And so by bringing these issues to the forefront, it's helping the community on the whole.
Awesome. Stan, your thoughts?
I think we need to make sure that we simplify things. Let's not make it so complicated. Engagement isn't complicated. Engagement is as simple as picking up the trash in your neighborhood. Let's simplify this thing, because sometimes I think when talking about civics and engagement and organizing and running an organization, people will say, I don't know nothing about a 501c3. I don't know nothing about the mayor's office. I don't know nothing about council. I can't go to a board meeting. I don't know any of that, or I'm scared. We come from a country where the school, the police, the fire, anything that's of a large structure is looked at as an authority. Therefore, people are intimidated. We got to take down those walls and really simplify it. What does engagement mean? Engagement means starting with your home, right? Advocating for your children, making sure that you're in touch with the teachers, making sure that you're in touch with your local city council person or local committee people, or you can call the mayor. You can pick up the phone and give the mayor a call. Simplify it and ask for simple things, and therefore you'll start to see how much your voice matters, because trust and believe, when the phone rings and it's a resident calling, government responds. Local government responds every time. They know that the residents are calling and something has to be done. But I don't think even in the Haitian community we're clear about that. And I don't think we feel that we even have the authority to call.
Right.
It's like, oh no, you're so much higher than me. I cannot, I'm not worthy. No, you are so worthy. And we got to let them know, look, we keep saying it over and over again. They matter. You matter as a citizen of this country. Whether you're a documented citizen or not, you matter, and the government owes you that to make sure that your well-being is taken care of.
But what people also don't realize is that when you're not calling, trust and believe that other people who are not, aligned with your interests are making phone calls.
Absolutely.
Right? So Diana, your thoughts?
I'm going to wrap it back to where I said, we keep doing to them and not with them, right? So one of the problems, even I swear to you, I should have bought Zoom stock before all this happened. But I used to say, we need to get to our constituents. A lot of the problem is we keep asking them to come to us. A lot of the problem is we keep doing to them without involving them. When I said they don't even understand their districts. They need to understand what's aligned and what's going on with them and who represents them. They would have to understand that the food situation in their home is part of it. The school situation in their house is part of it. You know what I mean? It is so easy to just sit down in a park and say hi. It's ridiculous. One of the craziest things I've had was twice this happened to me, when I got a phone call and they're like, Councilwoman it's Révolus, but Councilwoman Révolus. And I'm like, yes, this is me. And they're like, it's not an office. I'm like, no, it's me.
Yeah.
When you call, you directly get us, guys. You know what I mean? when I had somebody, another thing, being an activist in this role, right? You get to represent the true leaders in the community who would never come to these type of tables. But when you turn around and say, hey, I need to do this, this, and this, in 2 seconds, it's done. That's why I'm saying I came here as a servant and the leaders are out there. And engagement is as easy as saying hello.
Yeah.
It's just that easy. I even talked to, like, for example, the police officers here, and I'm like, where you lose interaction, the easiest way you lose interaction that you could really grab people, your dogs. Or, come out of your cars when you're at the bus stop with the kids. Talk to them. It's as easy as a municipality saying hello. How are you? What's wrong? Do you have a good day today? Engagement doesn't have to, because as soon as you do that, they trust you to start engaging with you. Then you can start directing them. And a lot of it is we look to them to be engaging, but we haven't invited that till we want to vote. Right? The door opens and it goes both ways. And part of it needs for us around the table to just come out and say, hey, I live here. Hi, how are you?
Yeah.
And it really is that simple. I mean, I get the same reaction when I pick up my phone, and I was like, well, who is supposed to pick it up if it's not me?
That's what I was like, well, who are you expecting? They're like, the secretary. I'm like, no, baby, it's me.
I'm like, ain't no secretary of my budget, child. Like, ain't nobody.
They don't pay me enough.
Answering my own emails, and they're like, well, that was quick. And I was like, well, if I don't do it now, it won't get done. So I do it ASAP.
And I really do want to engage with what you just said, because it's very true. If you don't, there's a multitude of people who are against you who do. They do valiantly. They're at every meeting. We get all their emails, we get all their phone calls, and they speak when it's open for the community to speak at meetings.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and it's scary to hear what they say sometimes too, like, especially if it's about gun ordinance. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And these are people that are in the grocery store right along with you, So it's really just kind of getting the fear factor on both sides under control, I guess, to just talk to each other. I feel politicians are just afraid of the everyday person, and the everyday person is afraid of the politician.
That is so true. That was a really interesting statement. But you agree, Stan?
I agree. I think I talk to my colleagues about this all the time. I mean, when the activists come, everybody runs to the other way. And I'm like, you can't run the other way.
Yeah.
You got to engage and find out what's going on. And if it's frivolous, it's frivolous. But if it's not, they have a voice, they have a right. This is the Constitution that we have, right? These are the Bill of Rights that we have. They have a right to speak their opinion and voice their thoughts and say what they're unhappy about. That makes us better.
Right, exactly.
We can now go out and do what we're not doing, or what we failing to do, or what we thought we were doing and not doing effectively. Especially Sister Diana, you talk about going to them, and that's so important because we hear it as politicians all the time. You go for election time, you go knock on a door, and they say you only come around during election time. Well, it's not necessarily true. I mean, we know that we're out there, but did we go knock on every door? I had somebody say to me after my first campaign, and I just thought about how overwhelming this would be, but it's not a bad idea. I said, you should do a thank you tour. Go around and knock on every door, just like you did to get elected.
Yeah.
Said, because think about it. The amount of time you guys know this, you can concur, right? The amount of time that you put aside for the campaign is a lot of time. So there's a lot that you stop doing in life to go out and knock on doors. So now I thought to myself, it's not a bad idea to go around and knock on every door. Is it realistic? Probably not.
Yeah.
But it's the same complaint we get about not being an activist anymore. Now that I'm an elected official, I can no longer be at all the rallies. I can only, and not because I don't want to or I can't. I don't have the time because now I'm busy fighting another fight in the boardroom, and and we're fighting another fight with people. And if we were not there, oh my God, I say to myself, if I wasn't sitting here, what would be happening?
Right.
You know, if I wasn't speaking for my people and advocating on their behalf and not missing on a lot of these opportunities that exist. And I think that's what the constituent doesn't know. And that's why I think we've come a long way by doing platforms like this. They can kind of hear our struggles and what we go through as elected officials. Because sometimes they think, all right, you're an elected official, you're rich and you're good, and you know, you got it all, right? They don't understand the hustle we had, or the business, you know, what we do to make money or what we do to make a living. They think we're eating off the government and we're just living off the government. But there's a lot that we've done to get to where we're at.
Right.
Let's not forget, we are Black. We had to work 10 times harder to get here, you know, unlike our counterparts. So that people got to remember that, but especially in the Haitian community, because there is a stereotype of the American politician being very similar to the Haitian politician. And there's a stereotype that exists with the Haitian politicians. Haitian politicians follow no rules and they do whatever, right? And that's the stereotype, you know?
Right.
And I think America, they think the same thing.
Yeah.
And it don't work like that. We got to go through council. We got to go through boards. We got to wait on this ordinance, that ordinance, before we go fix the park, before we go build this building, or before we pass the money, before we even think about hiring people. It's a process, you know, and that's the education that we keep talking about. Our people have to be educated on all these things that we're doing, that yes, we need to get here. Yes, your voice matters, but it's also a process. And if we were all at the table together and we were all in power, there would still be a process. You know?
And so thinking about what you just said, right? So this education that we have to do, not only on maybe like the policy making side, here's how we get to policy. And then of course, you know, the civic education about voting and all of that, but even just the technical stuff about, I cannot just wake up one day and say, I'm going to give you a job. It's the jobs for me. I mean, you know, it's not somebody handing you a resume and saying, hey, I heard you all have this position that's open. It's create a position for me.
Yes.
I have no resume, but I'm going to show up on Monday and start working. And so, you know, but the problem isn't that we don't want to put our people on, or we don't want to do the work. We want our community to progress. But the problem is that everybody has to understand that the commitment that we made as Haitian Americans, right? So that means that we have this double lived experience. We have the Haitian part of us and everything that comes with that, but we're also very American in our understanding of the way this world and this country works, right? And so when we came in, we said, we're going to do it the right way. We're going to do it the way it's supposed to be done. And that means that not only are we going to look out for our community, right? But we're going to make sure that our role here is about more than just, I'm giving you a job. And I'm empowering the community. I'm making policy decisions, right? That is going to make sure that this community does not have to rely on my election to get a job, to have their light bill paid, to have food on their table, right? Because it's those decisions that we make, not me as the individual that is responsible for the change in your quality of life. And so how do we continue in these last 11 minutes we got left? Let's talk a little bit about how do we continue to see progress within the Haitian and Haitian American communities throughout the United States. And I will go ahead and start with Eunice.
Yeah, so I think one of the ways that we can continue to see progress is by not reinventing the wheel. I feel like there are so many organizations within the Haitian American community across the country that are doing the same work, but are not communicating with one another. So some of the progress that has been made by one organization is then not, those best practices are not passed on to another. And it makes it so that our collective success is fragmented. So we need to do better at communicating with one another. Making sure that we're on the pulse of where these organizations are, ensuring that they have a liaison between them all, so that any resource, any connection that they have, or any conversations that they have, that information is continuing to flow freely throughout the states, so that we're all on the same page. Because essentially, whether it's a political empowerment organization, an organization that's focusing on maternal health or family health or what have you, the goals are the same. The goals are to ensure that members of the Haitian community, Haitian American community, have the resources that they need in order to live a quality life, have the education that they need in order for them to continue to engage in community and not feel like they can't be involved because of their economic barriers that they have, right? To ensure that they have the information that they need to be able to forward their path towards citizenship or assist a family member in their journey towards citizenship. But it all starts with coalition building. Right? It all starts with understanding, just having that repository of knowledge that we can tap into, that's not going to be overly burdensome to address. Because what happens is you have a lot of people who are so excited and so engaged, but there's burnout because they're spinning their wheels trying to do work where the same work they're trying to do, there was success maybe in Texas somewhere from an organization that they didn't have a connection to, they didn't have a pipeline to. And so if they did have that pipeline, then that very fervent activist, public servant wouldn't have burned out. They would have been able to maybe take in that model from Texas or California or whatever other state and reinvented it in a way that worked for New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Connecticut, wherever, but it starts with that. It starts with those bridges. We need to be better at building those bridges.
Right. Diana, what are your thoughts? How do we continue to progress?
Okay, so, and Councilwoman, and don't kill me, because one thing I'm going to say is probably going to counter what you just said, but I believe that we should be thinking almost 20 generations down the line, right? How to get our children's children involved. Then that being said, again, I'm going to come back to doing, I actually push entrepreneurship, homeownership, and being highly intelligent, not just educated, and creating different type of tax owners in our community to then truly attack different type of policies. Because, for example, we can start adding and changing stuff to people that can't afford it and get moved right out of their situation and home, right? So things like innovating in entrepreneurship, innovating in homes, structure, the core family structure, innovation in connectivity, because I actually have a problem with the term not reinventing the wheel, because then it lacks innovation in reaching. For example, if I am there and you are here and you're doing something there that I need, what innovative way can I get that information to me? It's not about reinvent. I don't want to redo what you're doing, but how do I get to you? And that takes innovation. Thought is life. Imagination is a transformation between the two. That is my motto for my company, Ashe Creation. Thought is life. That imagination to transform will take us generations down. And I just hope, and my hopes are that we can get more sustainability right on grassroots, so that when they become and engaging with them well before we need a vote is the thank you before the knocking from door to door, because then they know you already when you knock at the door. The thank you is the work you did before you knocked on the door. The thank you is the conversations that put the versions that you did towards policy that affects your constituents because you already talked to them before you knocked on the door. So, like I said, I'm second generation in this, and I'm watching my daughter watch me. Part of her is just like me, fighting even being here, but just in that fight, you know, it's going to be for her. You know what I mean?
Awesome.
I have other children that I'm watching that are Haitian young women that I'm watching and following their, and so with my company, I have hired them, and they have dealt with things. They're even they just did their interviews with the Mayor's Summer Youth Program, that my company is one of the companies, if they're hired, can come right into, and I'm a councilwoman. We have to create these lines that we want for our constituency, then rise them to the situation of, now how do we do this? When when Mackendal fell, Bookman came up. When Bookman fell, Tucson came up. When Tucson fell, Dessalines came up. When Dessalines came up, Henry. It was a process, and although we know those names, but we forget about Toya. Did we forget about Mary Jean? Did we forget about the woman who threw their child in the cannon so it couldn't shoot? Did we think about the man who just guerrilla fought with a machete, 20 guys down? Those conversations and stories don't happen, and that's how you strengthen. It's the warriors. My last name, Révolus, revolution, is there for a reason. And that revolution is the heartbeat of your constituents. And once we get them to the level to truly come to this political realm, it's no holds bar, because they will show up. They will say that, because we are truly equitable. I can pay to be here. I see you the same way you can see me, even if you're sitting there and I'm sitting here. You know what I mean? And I think that's when we strengthen anything, when we can make even the woodworker who didn't graduate college, but that woodworking craft gets him a 6-figure income, just because that's his given craft. You know what I mean? And that's the blood of IET. That's the heartbeat of IET. That's the heartbeat of us. You know what I mean? And it's and community at the end of the day. The last thing I'm gonna say, I joke. My blood type is C, and it's for community. I joke about that with my family, but that's really the reality of being Haitian and Haitian of descendant. Health, justice, education, even down to the soup that we make. We make the most healthiest soup, and then we share it and say it's freedom. You know what I mean? The way we want to educate our people should also look differently too. Educate them in their craft, educate them in their home, educate them in their skill, educate them in their money, and then let's bring them to policy.
Awesome. Thank you. Stan, close us out. You know, how do we continue to make progress?
The way we started this conversation, you said, how am I going to follow that? How do I follow that, right? I got to follow you.
You did it to me.
Goodness.
As you had told her, you'll be all right. You're good.
Right? I'll be okay. So first of all, it's been an absolute honor to be with all of you and just hear, you've empowered me this evening, and I think we've empowered each other. But I think the bottom line is, I'm going to keep it very simple, is we must plant the seed in order to keep this going. There is no other way to keep this going but to plant the seed. And what does that mean? Everything that you've all talked about today, everything that you all are doing, whether it be entrepreneurship, whether it be the education, whether it be political office, engagement, we got to plant the seed, and we're in the right place at the right time to plant the seed. We must plant the seed. If all that we're doing, we don't plant the seed, and we don't have successors, and we don't create examples, and we don't mentor, we must mentor people. Mentor people to business, mentor people to politics, mentor people to entrepreneurship, homeownership, finance, health, wellness, all of it, because you have the knowledge. If you have the knowledge, share it. you know, and that will empower the community, that will empower the world, that will save Haiti. You hear me? That will save Haiti, because we have the knowledge that we need to save Haiti. We have all the know-how, but if we're not planting the seed, if we're not going there and impacting one child at a time, one person at a time, all it takes is one. It don't take a whole bunch of people. So like I said, let's not complicate this thing, and let's simplify it and understand that we just have to empower just very few people, and they will multiply that, and they will continue to plant the seed. But we got to plant the seed.
That is awesome. What a way to close us out. Thank you all so much. It has been a pleasure to moderate this here panel. Stan, Diana, Eunice, I cannot thank you enough for your time, your insight, and for sharing so much of yourself and your stories here today. I also want to take the time to thank NAAHP, and HAVE Coalition for putting this together, and all of the sponsors, Book It, Shokarela, the VSS Hour, Le Mojo Show, Telepam, who has kept us informed on what is happening on the ground in Haiti at facebook.com/TelepamUSA. You know, I want to let everyone know that there is another panel going on about the constitutional crisis that has developed in Haiti. So I encourage you all to tune into that. And on Tuesday, we are having another Diaspora Townhall, and y'all will find that also on the VSS Hour, and it'll be focused around the policy agenda that the Haitian American community in South Florida with some friends from all over have put together. And it's something that is an ever developing document. And so we really encourage people to take part. Tune into the VSS Hour, tune into Avancez Ensemble on Tuesday. I believe that's May 25th at 7 p.m. Thank you all so much again for your time, for your insight, for your passion. And thank you all to you viewers who stayed with us through this evening. Bye.
Mona, what a powerful panel this was. I think you're mute. Yes.
Yes, Johnny. Contrary to what Vanessa just announced, unfortunately, we could not have our last panel. But on behalf of our organizers, we wanted to bring a sincere words of thanks. So I'm going to allow you to start with our sponsors and our speakers.
Obviously, I mean, I think the first, we want to say thank you to NAAHP, the National Alliance for the Advancement of Haitian Professionals, the Haitian American Voters Empowerment, HAVE Coalition, and the National Haitian American Elected Officials Network, NAAHPN. I think these three organizations, once again, have demonstrated how important it is for organizations to come together and bring important information, important conversation to the community. I think if we kind of look at least in those two panels, the caliber of people that we have in our community, right? And if we look at this last panel and how not only informed, but also how committed, right? These folks, the servant leaders are, and how much they want to add to, every time, at every moment, to bring up the Haitian community, the Haitian history, right? I think this is a testament of really everything that is, amazing about what we call Haiti and Haitians. And so
absolutely, Johnny. And you know how we always talk about l'union fait la force, and contrarily, some people would tell you, well, I see pas qu'à travailler ensemble. Guess what? The National Haitian American for Elected Officials Network, NAAHP, which is the National Alliance for the Advancement of Haitian Professional Network, and HAVE, which is the Haitian American Voters Empowerment Coalition. Actually, all the members of the host committee came from those organizations. And it was certainly a pleasure for me to sit at the table in the kitchen, actually, where all of this was being prepared. And I would be remiss if I did not extend my sincere thanks to people like Adelie, people like Molina, who worked tirelessly. Those two women, I'm telling you, I have no words because they were so patient with our team of speakers and elected officials, because you know how busy their schedule is, Johnny. And it was hard to track people down. They're in the middle of elections, campaigns, and it was certainly hard. But I have to tell you, all of this was possible because of the patience of these two wonderful soldiers behind the scenes, that they're not the ones being seen tonight, it's us. But guess what? Behind the scenes, there's a lot of hard work in order for this to take place. I got to thank the leadership of people like Dr. Alix Desulme, who was very adamant, about making sure that, in honor of Haitian Heritage Month, that we have such an activity. Vanessa Joseph, our, host, who just stepped down, for her leadership, for her continued leadership with HAV. And of course, Serge Bruno, NAAHP, of course, passed, passé representation, of course, for their wonderful work throughout the diaspora. So, sincerely from the bottom of our heart and on behalf of the entire diaspora, in honor of Haitian Heritage Month, this could not have happened any other way. We truly thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to the audience, really, for making the time. Thank you for all of the participants who made time in their schedule to come to this particular town hall. But unfortunately, the next town hall, the next sessions, which was slated to talk about the history of the different constitutions that Haiti has had, is unfortunately will have to be postponed. And we deeply apologize to all of the viewers. We know that folks were really excited about that particular session because I think there is a lot of information about this change in constitution, and folks really wanted to kind of hear about, what's been in the previous constitutions, how many other constitutions have we had, what are some of the differences that exist between this one and the one that is being proposed now. So unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, this session will have to be postponed, and we again want to apologize to the viewers. But I know the team that's been planning this, I wanted us to not only extend that, but to also say that that session will be rescheduled because it's so important that we have it. So we just want to say good night to everyone. We want to say thank you. It's the beginning of a conversation. And I think that I hope that this is something that continues in terms of, on a regular basis, these organizations come together and try to talk about issues that are important to our community.
Johnny, as a host, as a member of the host committee, I must thank you for allowing the Mojo to be a partner on this town hall as well. Thank you to Teleimage, Valerio Saint-Louis, who's a wonderful partner of ours, who was willing to also come on board with us, on this endeavor. Thank you to Shokarela, as usual, for his tireless work. Whether he's in Haiti or in the diaspora, it's always a pleasure to collaborate with our brother. Thank you to Telepam, as Vanessa was mentioning earlier, for keeping the Haitian diaspora focused as to and informed as to what's happening in Haiti. And I know you would not leave out our accountant firm, Johnny, that you're
right.
Of. Go ahead.
Book it right. No, I was completing your sentence to say
yes,
book it right. Book
I
it right.
certainly will book it right. I certainly will book it right. And we're hoping that our audience will definitely support those platforms who actually tonight were our major partners and who really made this possible for you to have. Thank you so much for your collaboration.
Thank you. And we say good night to all of you. We wish everyone a good health. And of course, wherever you are, we love you and we hope to see you very soon. Thank you and good night.
Till next time, be well.